Hi, good afternoon. My name is Utpal Borpujari. There is always a confusion about my surname, though it's very simple in the spelling, but still it's okay. Welcome everybody. I see lots of young faces, which is a very good thing because this session is on pitching. I was just having a discussion, not a discussion, but chit-chat with Kaushik. And he said that, for many of us from the earlier generation, pitching means the cricket pitch and how to, pitch the ball. But now pitching means how to pitch your story. So what we'll do is we'll have a little bit of discussion and then open the stage for questions because I think with the experience of all the four panelists here, they can share a lot about how to pitch your story to a prospective financer or to a prospective producer. So I'll start with the lady. Welcome to India. I hope you are having a very good time here. When somebody says pitching a film, what do you what would you say? I mean, say somebody asks you how to pitch a film.
Well, first you talk about the fishing, then the pitching. That's where you're talking.
Yeah, I mean, it says don't go fishing, so I am not going fishing anywhere. I'm straight coming to pitching. Yeah. Of course, if I am sure Kaushik being a Bengali, I being an Assamese, we can talk hours on fishing. But still, we'll straight go to pitching.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Dhanyavad, for being here. And I'm a professor too at a cinema university in Brazil, and that's the whole point of the entire college. I say when you go to a cinema university, you're trying to make films. Whether if you are a producer, a director, a screenwriter, it doesn't matter. The thing is, how do I make films? How do I make it possible? And that's the whole point. So not going fishing and going pitching means you know the film you're making. You know your film and you know who might like it. And that's the very beginning. You have to find a market, not really and necessarily a great market. It doesn't have to be commercial. It could be. You could have a little tiny film, you could have a medium film, you could have a very big film. I mean, we make in Brazil very independent movies. We don't have a Bollywood, but you have. So surely there are different audiences to different films. And that's the whole point. Because if you are loyal to your film, you know your film you're making, you don't have to make yourself believable because you believe. Once you believe in your film, people who are listening to you, they are going to believe in your film. So don't try to make your film seem to be something that it is not. So that's a good start also. And study the person you are talking to. That's the very basic thing is, for example, here, as Mr. just said, I see new faces, but I see also people experienced maybe. So maybe they can talk, they can teach me something. So I see, for example, that you are expecting me to give you very nice tips, but there is no one universal tip because every pitching is different. If you're talking to experienced people who have a lot of money, they are probably waiting for you to tell them they are going to get more and more money. And if your film is capable of that, great. If they're not, you have to find something that they might like in your film. So that's it.
Right. So just take what she said that you have to be true to yourself, true to your story. So I'd like to ask Mr. Lee, How does it happen in China? Because in China, a lot of films are produced by the government with the help of government. So, what kind of pitching usually happens in China? I mean, if a new filmmaker comes and approaches the finance departments, the film finance departments for funding, is there a system of pitching, or is it a kind of going to the script and deciding?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's so pleased to be in India first time. It's a fascinating country. Think about coming here for years. Finally, I'm here. Okay, to first correct you, my last name is Fang. In China, family name goes first.
Okay,
All right, so Fang Li means sometimes we call it Li Fang or Fang Li, whatever. Anyway, our family goes first. All right. In China today is totally different from probably the rest of the world. When I started making film, back 16 years ago, there's nobody I can pitch for money, right? I go my own pocket because I'm also a businessman, I'm a scientist, I'm an oceanographer, I'm an engineer too. So because I have many other business, that's why I never pitch anyone. The difficult the pitch for me to do is to the public, and actually to the theaters, to distribution companies. But today is totally different because Chinese cinema market is growing crazy, like 30+ growth rate annual. So I would say there are more investors than the writers, directors, and the producers. There are more money than needed. That is the problem, actually, for our market. You see a lot of very shitty story, very bad story gets a lot of money. Because a lot of investors, they are not really investing into films. They are borrowing this opportunity in a big potential growth for a large population country. They are using the opportunity to speculating the stock. People are using cinema as a tool to leverage their margin of investment return. So actually we are facing, even when we say we are, have more money available than needed, but actually we are facing a very dangerous time because those monies really is going to destroy all the talents. Young people, easily to get lost. What's for? Why we're making films? I like to hear the audience here. Why we are making films? It's only for making money? I don't think so. Because to me, film first is culture. It's not just a commodity. Of course, we can make a film become a commodity. But if we go straight, making a film as a commodity, you're a loser. Because your film cannot stay longer than few months. You can make some money, but very quickly your money disappears, going to the trash can. Because it's not well accurately or I will say precisely record our life or with more imagination about our future. So when I answer your question, how to pitch, the story depends on who we are talking to. We are talking to those bad investors. I would tell them, you go away. I don't need you. But a good investor, I would tell them, do you like cinema? Because you're going to get more than just economic return. You're getting more memory of your life. You're getting more pleasure of your life. So when I go pitch to investors, I will tell them more than just money return. I will tell them you are living in the world so short. From our film, you're going to be pleased because 50 years later, your name as an investor still in the history there. That's why I totally like to pitch the investor. In addition to the monetary return, it's more life value, cultural value, artistic value. Typically, we will touch them. If they're really serious about cinema investment. That's my answer.
I think what he has just said is, in many parts it's quite similar to the India story. it's very tough to find funding in India also to make a good film, especially when the young filmmakers, first-time filmmakers, they go in search of funding. It's quite tough. We have Salis, who is from South Africa, and he's quite young, and his film has created a lot of kind of positive noise everywhere. Free State. It's a kind of a political, socio-political kind of subject. So how tough it was for you to get funds for the film? Did you have to pitch to funding agencies, or did you make it easily, and how did it go?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I must say, in South Africa, the situation is totally the opposite of what you have in China.
No funds?
The problem or the big challenge we have at the moment in South Africa is the fact that we have a very small domestic market. So, for instance, what will sound shocking to you guys is you have a very big South African film coming out. A big release is something like 60 or 70 screens, and you have we have a very big contingency of about 80 to 20. It's getting better, but 80 to 20 of Hollywood versus South Africa, 80% being Hollywood. So it is but we're a very young market, and in our situation, pitching is very important because you also have a situation where you have to decide whether you are going to make a movie for South Africa, which are very diverse in itself as well, because we've got 11 official languages, a lot of social stands of where people are, and the other problem that we also have, which is the biggest problem, is that the cinemas are not accessible to everybody, which is a big problem for domestic films. So basically what it comes down to is that we have to, the moment that you go over $500 for a budget on a film, you have to get foreign investment in it as well, and the opportunity, or at least give the opportunity that film will do well in whoever supports it from wherever the funds may come. So in our sense, pitching is very important, and I mean, if I can just add to what my colleagues have said, is I think it's very important that you know who you're pitching to. I think pitching should start, in our case, it starts already in your development phase. Your script writer should be able to give you a proper log line, a proper synopsis, and then confidence is very important, and to know where you fit in. So it in our sense, it is, or in our circumstances in South Africa, it's very important to know where films have previously done well, where certain genres sits, and where it doesn't help you if you're going to the moment that you go to Cannes or Berlin or one of these big festivals or markets. Obviously, there is people specializing in certain genres. It doesn't help you to go with your art house film to a company that specializes in horror films. They will listen to you, and you will do your big presentation, but it won't get you anywhere. So I think the most important thing is to know where one could find yourself, or where a possible partner could be. In my case, I was very lucky that I was a previous film of mine was selected for Malmi a few years ago, and I pitched my idea of the Afrikaans and the Indian family in South Africa during the 70s to somebody there, and they were very keen to come on board. But we are still at a phase where it will be very difficult even in the nearby future for us to produce films with a budget of more than $1 million. So we have to be very inventive, and I think at the moment where our industry really started picking up in the last 6 years. So at the moment you have a lot of skills, and we're operating at about 60% of what we actually can do, but we don't have the money to go that one step further, because we don't have a domestic market that can do your first tier of income. But having said that, our local broadcasters and the government through the DTI and the NEVF has been supporting, and the whole system is starting to work. And I think having seen a lot of films during yesterday and today, I think hopefully we will get to that, but I think it's still a long road. We're about 10 years away from some of the films that I've seen here, that some of the other BRICS countries are doing already. But I think our biggest challenge is to know where we fit in and what will make our stories interesting to the world. I think that's the most important thing out of a South African perspective. What is entertaining about South Africa for the rest of the world, and what will make it interesting? And obviously the answer is basic stories, basic love stories, basic urges, and putting it in a South African setting, and working with the genres. And I think we all, as South African producers and filmmakers in general, must take that responsibility to present to the world stories that they know, but in a South African context, in a South African milieu.
So basically, what you said is that when you pitch, you have to know who you are pitching to.
Absolutely.
And you have to go to the right person to pitch your idea. I mean, depending on the genre of the story.
Absolutely, and you have to show that it could be profitable and it's entertaining. I think the moment that you can show in any pitch situation, doesn't matter who you pitch to, if you can show that it's going to be entertaining on whatever level, once you know who you're pitching to and what you're pitching to, I think that is the most important thing. And how is your project different? And I mean, I think that is in India probably a very big thing, is to show and in China, where you make so many films a year, if you want to make a big film, you have to show, I suppose, what makes it better or what makes it different, at least, of the previous film in that genre.
So that brings me to Kaushik. You are one of the most prolific filmmakers in India currently. In the last 10 years, you have made films almost every year. There is a film, and you were also, I think you have won the maximum number of awards in IFFI. I mean, in the last few years, if I remember, Pul Pachali, then Chotuder Chobi, and then Cinema Wala, they have been winning awards year after year. So, do you have to pitch?
That means I'm fishing and pitching simultaneously. There was but I'm not the right person to talk about it, but I never pitched any of my films in the international market. But I've been to festivals and I've seen people are talking about it and coming out of the film market and saying it's all bogus. There's no need of any film market. Nothing is happening. Actually, it's a facade. Actually, that's not true. If you go with a subject which is not global, if you go with a subject which is very local and not addressing any human international issues, film market is not interested about that. Right. Your parents might say it's a lovely story. They might cry after listening to the scripts. That's not enough. Once I was attending a seminar like this, and there was a dais in front of us. The 11 speakers were there. The table was very short, and it finished just before my chair. I was sitting on the extreme left, so I didn't have a table in front. I was feeling naked, absolutely. You feel guarded, you have a dais in front of that. So I was sitting there, and that's the condition exactly of the independent filmmakers. They have a chair, but they don't have a dais in front of them to guard them, to protect them. So what I said, we keep on brooding about that and not having a table in front of us, or else you can enjoy your leg space. What I suggest, independent filmmakers, enjoy your leg space. Don't miss that table. As they said, that films are sometimes, to some producers, it's commodity. And to some producers, it's culture. We have both the type of producers in India. And we have to decide where to go. Everybody will say the same thing. Rather fishing, you sit for hours inside of a lake and wait for the fish. And in case of your story, finding of subjects, fishing for story is good, but pitching for film is a different issue altogether.
Absolutely.
You need that patience of fishing to look for the correct subject, which is global, which is international, which will address. I can remember when Cinema Wala got this prestigious award, UNESCO Fellini Award. During felicitation, they said this is a very local issue which has addressed a global interest. That is the thing, I believe. When we go to a film market, when you meet them, when you talk to them, be very focused and know the USP, unique selling point of that story. That's all. And believe in your film. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very well spoken, Kaushik, that absence of the dais or your leg space, which one you have to choose. But when you go pitching, I mean, I'm asking it to all four of you. If you go pitching a story, new story, how do you do some research on who you are going to meet? You know, because like Silas said, it's very important to know who you're approaching. I mean, you might be pitching to the absolutely wrong person who might not understand the art part of it. He's only interested in the money part. And you are going with a story which is...
See, in the domestic market is easier. Yeah. You know them, you know their history, what kind of films they've made previously. But in international market, you have no clue actually. So you keep on trying. That's the main thing. Pitching means put the ball on the right place, on the good lens spot. That's all.
I think it takes a lot of practice. Definitely. I think it's something you have to practice. The first skill a writer definitely should have is the ability to at least write a pitch, even though they're not presenting it. But I think it is very important, like my colleague also said, is what is your selling point? And just stick to that. Because if you start moving in circles in a pitch, that's the worst thing that can happen to you. You know, if you want to convince people of how lovely the cinematography is going to be and how lovely the production's design, and there's this new actress that you have been grooming, but they don't care. They don't care about that. They want to know what is the selling point. And the selling point should also always be, firstly, it's a good story. And it's an interesting story, and it's an entertaining story. And then, I mean, then obviously there's other stuff that comes along. If you have a big name director involved, or you have obviously the best way to pitch is to say, I've got Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet in the lead roles in one sentence. And the story is about the two of them. Obviously in our situation, in Europe and in America, people will be interested and they will listen and they will tell you more. And it's you would know as a professor, is that old thing of you have to set yourself up so that whoever is on the other side of that table asks, tell me more. But if they don't ask you more, stand up and leave, because then this pitch is not going well, and it's not, and you shouldn't. I think that was when I started doing it a few years ago. That was my biggest mistake, is I tried to convince somebody that is totally not interested. And what happens is you lose a lot of confidence in doing that. So set yourself up. This is the title, this is my story, this is the genre, and this is the actors that I intend to use. If they don't want to hear further than that, say thank you for your time and get up and go.
Yeah, Mr. Fang, would you like to add something to what you
Yeah, I would totally agree with my colleague here. When you go pitching anywhere, you ought to study first. Just like you do any marketing sales, you have to understand who you're talking with. So I would agree, before we go and pitching, we should fishing first.
Very well said, yeah.
So really, it's not contradictory at all. We should fishing first. I can share with you some of my experience. For instance, when I was making a double exposure, that's way back 2011. You know, our story actually is it's pretty good done, a story, but the difficulty for us is we're supposed to shoot our story in a plastic surgery hospital. I'm trying to find a hospital. My pitching was not for money. for using for free of their hospital. And, because we prepare well, also because we have a strong casting, you're thinking about how a plastic surgery clinic can find a beautiful, woman star to represent their name. No way. Because, the beauty is natural beauty. If someone can represent plastic surgery, everybody think this woman is going to be fake. So because our story built up, fit into that hospital so well, not only we got, the 10 days, actually 2 weeks using, they clean up the whole hospital for us to use for free. Not only that, I got $1 million cash for free. Think about that. After I made a film, the board of chairman, the chairman of the board were so happy with this film. At the beginning, they're pushing us to put their logo everywhere. I said, you forget about that. If my story fail, everybody fail. So he listened to us. But at the end, because the story came out is really good. Also, their name you cannot escape everywhere. So at the end, they added another $0.8 million to buy and ad time for us, but carry our name there. But I'm using this example is in addition to how we're going to tell our story, we need to put ourselves into our audience, the position to see what can we bring to them, what can they perceive what we're talking about. So we need to, because this is a communication issue. Pitching is really a communication. So we need to really study. I really totally agree with my partners here. And we need to study everyone we're going to talk to, so that we also need to put ourselves into their position, thinking back to our film. That's what I would add.
So, anybody among you can answer this. How difficult is it to balance the creative part of pitching and the financial part of pitching? Because sometimes your creative requirements may be beyond what the producer is offering you. Producer might be he might be ready to finance your project, but it's what you are asking is too much for him, maybe.
Well, for me, just a little point regarding what they're just talking. The first time I went to a film festival with a market, I was totally lost. I didn't know many people. I had a little film that went well, but it was a very independent film with a very experimental narrative, but the jury liked it. It wasn't a very good festival, so I asked my partners, other producers who had more experience, where to start. That's not a problem, because I didn't know whoever else to start. Do I talk to this distributor, to this sales agent? What do they like? So I didn't know where to start. So little by little, step by step, I learned, not easily, how to do it. And now when I get to a film festival, when I get to a market, when I go to developing workshops, I know who I am talking to. And I look in the catalog, in the film market, and I search and I make research about what they've done, whether if it's a sales agent or whether it's a distributor, whether it's a co-producer. I look what the type of film, because I am an independent producer, so I make very artistic film, director-driven, so I can't promise them money, never, because domestic market in Brazil is also little, except for the United States. That's a very good market because we're a very big country, but for independent films in Brazil, they have some difficulty to get the market. So I can't promise that. I have to promise another type of things. And these kind of things just come when I talk a lot with my director. And that may answer your question, which is, if I'm making director-driven films, I have to make it appear. It doesn't matter if I have much or less or more money, because what the people I'm talking to are interested in director-driven films. So I make them know that I know what I'm doing, that I know how to do this film, I know how to bring this film to him and make the director's idea possible. I know how to manage the budget, I know where the markets where we are going. Because in Brazil we have to, first, if you are a tiny independent producer, usually when you go global, you have to get the first money in your country. That in Brazil, and I'd say 90% of the films in Brazil are made with state money. So I have to pitch first at home. That's why we make rehearsals on pitching. Usually you spend like 1 month writing a project to send to a fund. And if they don't like the first words, they just throw it away because, it's 300 scripts to read. So if you don't get them in the 15 first pages, and if you don't have a good writing on making your film believable, they won't read it at all. So that's the first step. Once you get that, once you pitch, make them know you are a good producer and you understand your film and you understand your director. And that's the balance, maybe.
So it's very important to first prepare a very focused log line and then a synopsis which puts forward your idea, then the script.
Well, it depends. In a film festival, usually apart from the place you are, where everybody is, they have their agenda. Usually, when you go to a film festival, to a film market, you have to settle all the meetings before you get there. So, in an email, if you don't know the person, you have to convince them in an email that you are the person he's looking for. Or if you know, that's the thing about networking. If you know someone who knows someone, and that someone can introduce you to that person, whatever. It could be in a party, it could be in a evening convention. Sometimes you meet them in the elevator, and you have to, so you are Mr. Something, and I know you, I'm Manu Costa, I'm from Brazil, I've made this and this film, and I'd like to you about Paraná. Maybe you have some time tomorrow or today, 5 minutes. You have like 3 minutes to make it. It's difficult, but it's possible.
I'd like to add another experience. I still want to add about selling point. When we start initiate or putting together our selling point, really those selling points are quite different from domestic investors and international buyers because your target of the market is totally different. I give one example to share with everyone. When I was the financing ourselves for the film, but unfortunately later was banned in China, called the Summer Palace. And the film was shot year 2004 and was in Cannes for competition. Year 2006, we ran into multiple troubles. But when we trying to pitch investors, for instance, in year 2004, when I was trying to calling the more my friends in the investment community, when I look at, I only select the people's age who were born in the 60s. Why is that? Because this film is is for the event happened in 1989 when the democratic movement was happening. To that generation, this story is something really in their heart. So even they know they're going to not make money, they're going to invest. So you select that kind of generation. When I was in the pitching and the movie in Japan, I was trying to do a pre-sale to finance the production. You know what I told them? I said, you go to ask anyone in Japan. They invested so much money in the 80s in China. But after 1989 event, something dramatic happened. You tell all the business community, 10 years later, they're going to China, right? They negotiate. You ought to understand who are your competitors, who are your counterparts. You want to know who they are, how they grow up, you go watch our film. That's how I pitch them.
That's a very interesting point.
Yeah, well said.
Coming back to Kaushik, when you made your first film, of course now I understand that if you just say I want to make a film, you would get the finance. Hope I guess so. But when you made your first film, how difficult was it to get the funding?
It was difficult. Definitely, it was difficult. I was making films for televisions for a long time, and one of my friends says, as long as you are not a filmmaker, so-called, you need to make a film first to break the ice. That is very important. In India, we don't get that, honor of making a film if you make it on television. And in USA, the filmmakers are called filmmakers even for their telefilms. But we call them telefilms, and it's absolutely limited to television market. So one of my friends, he produced the film, first film. He said, I'll pay and you become a filmmaker. And I was very worried about digital camera on my floor, Since I was making telefilms for years, a digital camera looks the same, like television camera. I was very particular that I'll make the film on celluloid. And kept on making that for 10 films at a stretch. And I was very lucky to do that. But it was difficult, really difficult. Even I had enough showreel for the producers. But everything started rolling when finally I got celluloid, and finally when I had a proper release across theatres.
So once the first film happens,
It's
after
very
that,
important.
it becomes slightly easier to pitch yourself.
And you have to have patience. I lost patience. That's why my first film, I'm still not very happy with my first film, and it was a disaster commercially. And poor friend who produced it.
So maybe you can try to compensate him now by offering him one of your films now, making him a co-producer.
Long back, finally he has recovered, but imagine that shock. The film is not running after the second week.
I know. I mean, that happens with a lot of first-time producers who, in India, in the films made in the various regions, a lot of producers, they never make another film.
The major issue, if you start thinking that what the audience will like, will be a disaster, But you have to convince yourself what kind of story you would like to tell. You're in a position of a teacher, or making a film, giving that film to your society. So that is very important. I was playing to the gallery and messed it up.
So the lesson is never play to the gallery. Yeah.
Try not to.
Try not to.
Whether they like it or not.
They will like it, definitely. If you're sincere, they will like it. If you're tricky, they won't.
Yeah, I agree with that statement, because if you're dishonest, the public will see it on a mile coming. Yeah, they're not fools. No. So I think honesty in whatever, and I mean everybody said that, is if you really believe in your project, and you do the work, the rest will follow. But then you really have to commit. And I think for me as well, I'm still pretty new at this, but I have done 6-7 films now. And it's still working against myself not to be impatient. I understand exactly what you said now. That's very good advice for any young filmmaker is on that first one, try and take your time, because once it's out there, it's going to be out there forever. And it's nice to learn from your mistakes, but it's not nice to see it every now and then on TV. With the whole country.
And a lot of filmmakers, over the years, they have told me during conversations that every time they see their first film, every time they watch it, they discover a new mistake, new fault.
The worst thing about it is that people warned you about it while you were making the film. They warned you, and you didn't listen. So that is the worst thing about it. So it was stuff that you could have fixed, but you didn't. And I think that especially that first 3 projects, you're very clever. And it's very nice to get over that phase when you don't have to make the same mistakes over and over. But I think we, as a general rule, and I'm sorry I'm working away, but it's, as a general rule, when we do the script read through with the crew, we've got a rule now that if somebody spots a problem in the script read through with the crew, it's not even the public, then pay attention to it, because if it's now a problem, it's definitely going to be a problem if it's on a big screen. So listen to advice, please.
Have any of you faced a situation of like you're pitching your idea to somebody and that person is totally, clueless about what you are trying to speak? What kind of frustrations come inside you?
It's like 50 or 60% of the people you talk to, or more. I don't know. Even my mom, when I talk about my films, she says, I know you're very artistic. I don't understand well, but it's going to be okay. It's very difficult to make people see a thing which is very imagetic, and you don't have an image sometimes to make them understand. It's very difficult. You directors are very passionate people, but sometimes they just talk, and the person who is on the other side of the table, it just don't get a thing because it's not their language. So our job as a producer is to make it understandable and sayable. Is that this word? This word exists?
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
So make it sayable, but being loyal to the film you're making and being loyal to the person you're working with. Because I work a lot with first directors. The first feature films they make. Imagine in a market who I'm facing people like you who have like 8, 10 films. It's quite difficult, very difficult. And I count on my own background as a producer and to make the directors show their passion, because it's 90% of what they do. I don't know if you agree, but nobody's investing, no director, no screenwriter is investing, at least in Brazil, 5, 6 years to make a film, to complete a film, if he's not passionate about it. So I have to be also, but I have to be more rational, that it's quite difficult to put in words, sayable.
But I just want to add to that is you have to understand what the difference is between pitching a film to be made and what is marketing it to an audience. There's a huge difference, and I think what I found a lot in my career, when people start pitching to me, they do a marketing pitch of how this money, how this will be easy to market this, instead of pitching me the film that you're going to make. And there's definitely a distinct difference between the two. So I think in that sense, once again, it's a skill and you have to study. Pitching is not easy. It's a 3-minute thing, and you have to know what you're going to say. And you have to convince somebody. Whether I agree. And in the beginning of my career as well, I also pitched a lot to people that believed in the cultural bit of it, and because in South Africa there's no guarantee that you will make any money back. So I have a lot of that people that will say, listen, I saved my whole life. I want to be part of something big. I want to be part of a big film, and I want my name on that big screen. That's a whole different thing, because then it's an emotional thing. Then you pitch a story based on emotions. The moment that you move towards, if you're doing rom-coms or comedies or action films or whatever, then you have to pitch it. There's been thousands and thousands of action films and rom-coms been made. Why is yours different, and why will it be entertaining? Just stick to that, and then you should be alright. You will, if you have a good concept and a good log line, if it's destined to be, you will find the right people to invest in your film.
Can I ask you all a question? Just one or two more questions, then I'll open the. Sorry. Okay. No. What Okay. Just one or two more questions I have, then I'll throw open the. One thing I want to know: these days there are a lot of pitching workshops that happen, and there it's sometimes it's told that one has to go now beyond the written word. You have to maybe have a poster, you maybe have a small video about what you are trying to go, maybe a location, some photographs, some videos. How important is that as part of the pitching process? Mr. Pang, would you like to say?
Well, I think it's well, it is very important today because everybody is so experienced with mobile information terminal. You see, everybody have a cell phone today. Everybody is so used to information, to images, to different sound. So everybody's eyeball has been almost saturated with colors. So that's why, you ask everybody here, how many people are still reading big books? Everybody reading information pieces, quick. At least in my community I deal with. So that's why I said a smart, the diversified presentation with image material, photography, and photographs, and also, of course, good synopsis with selling point is the key. But whatever you can help to build up the presentation, that helps. People are so used to that today.
You have a very, very important story to tell regarding Satyajit Ray. When Satyajit Ray started making Pother Panchali, he was not in a position to write a script. He didn't know how to write a script. Can you imagine? So he had to draw the entire film like an advertisement storyboard. Entire film. And he was a very good painter, very good artist. So he did that. Can you imagine submitting that album to a producer? What else do you need? Nowadays film producers in international market, they are asking for short promos for 2 minutes, 3 minutes promos, just to see your skill. Sometimes it's easy to present a good script, but it's very difficult to convert it into a good cinema. So they want to estimate that through those small promos, which is very important. And I believe storyboard is equally important, which is not very expensive.
Thank you. So with that, we'll throw open the floor to questions. I think you have a question.
We can hear you. We can hear.
Yeah. Hello to everyone actually here. I want to ask whether the film industry can survive without fishing. Because as you see in most of the international film festivals, not the best movie is getting the awards. Many times it's not. And it's arguable, many times it's debatable whether this movie or that movie should have. So what do you think about, can the film industry survive without fishing?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but obviously what we try to say a lot now is that is you have to there's not really something like fishing. I think what was mean in this context is if you pitch up to an executive or a producer, as I understand it, and you ask, listen, I am a good filmmaker, what sort of stories do you need? Tell me what you need and then I will make that. That's fishing, right? Versus coming into an office and say, I've got this story about A and B falling in love, it's going to be this budget film, it should travel there and there, are you interested? That's the difference between the two, so I'm not sure if...
You're right.
Yeah, so fishing as in this context means not knowing what you want to make. Waiting for people to tell you what you
I
have
believe
to
what
make.
he is saying, don't roam around with 5 films in hand, which is very difficult. I have 5 ideas, I can narrate 5 ideas. If it looks very defocused,
Yeah, it does.
that
And
means
to
you are
pitch-
not sure about the best one.
Yes, and if you try to pitch 5 films in 3 minutes, I don't know what you're gonna do.
And plus, I work at this moment with 5 or 6 different directors. And I'm not telling everyone about all my projects. That's not fishing. that I know who I'm talking to. I know that one film needs one type of co-producer, the other film might have another type of sales agent. So I'm not going to every market with all my projects in my arms to talk to everybody that stands in front of me. That's not producing. That's, I don't know, selling a commodity maybe. You have a shop and everybody who passes by may be interested. That's not what I do. So.
Culture and art can be sold.
Sorry?
Even the culture and art can be sold. It's become a commodity finally. I'm sorry, but it is true.
Maybe, but it's not the kind of film I do. Yeah, you know, maybe for a different type of producer, which is not a crime, it's possible. I just don't make this type of movies. And if a director comes to me with this type of movie, I'd say, I don't know how to do it. Maybe we can learn it together. I'll try my best to do it, but it's not.
Just to counter that, what you said, art and culture can be sold. If art
It is being sold.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's
there is an economy. There is an economy on culture.
No, excuse me. Let's just focus to asking questions to the panelists.
Yeah.
You can have your discussions afterwards. It's a never-ending debate anyway.
True. First of all, thanks a lot for all you guys coming from different part of the world, and thank you, Mr. Kaushik, for discussing all what your experiences are. I have a very specific questions in two parts. First is to all of you, and the second one to Mr. Kaushik specifically. The first one is that when you talk about the market, that we have this market, and as a filmmaker, very small one presently, I want to ask, how do you access these distributors? Like, I've sent my film to Cannes, unluckily it didn't get selected, but that doesn't mean I'll send again. What I'm trying to ask is that, how do you get in touch with these distributors across the world, like you're from China? I saw it on the internet and I've been surfing, but somehow they're not accessible, or maybe I'm not knocking the right doors. So if you could share some light on that. That's the first one. Once they answer this, Mr. Kaushik, I'll bother you again.
That was my first sentence, I believe. You have to know the market you are targeting.
No, I'm asking very specifically. Like, for example, you say there's a sales agent.
Yeah.
How do
Where is the sales
identify and
agent?
access that sales agent?
Where do I call? Where do I meet? Like, in India, I'll come to the point that I want to ask Mr. Kaushik. So in
Yes.
international markets, where? Is there a directory?
You have a,
Yes, there is. Yeah.
There is? Thanks.
yes. Go on.
Please share.
So basically what happens is the ideal way in a perfect world is to go first to a sales agent, and the sales agent will get you distribution through distributors, right? So what happens at the market is, as a producer, you have to register as a producer at the festival or at the market, and then you receive a long list of a whole book basically of all the sales agents and everybody that is present at that specific market.
So basically, your film has to be selected for the festival, and then you get
No.
Market
You go
is
as a
separate,
producer.
yeah.
You go as the producer.
You go as a producer. If you are a director, you need the producer. Usually
No, I am
directors...
the producer as well. My
Okay,
producers
no.
are there.
So you have to register yourself in a market part of the festival.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you get the feedback about who are the distributors, sales agents coming there.
Great.
Then you have to connect with them.
Not only that, you can get to meet them personally.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think definitely you need to do a lot of study.
Yes.
Yeah,
Especially
that's a part of that, yeah.
Which market you are aiming for. Okay, which part of, like a European market, a North American market, East Asian market, a Chinese market. You maybe pick up a few films similar or have the same taste of your own film. You go check all their distributors, check their sales agent. And with today's information, especially internet, it's so easy to study. The other
Awards and festivals, they don't mean everything. They mean a lot.
But like you
But
guys
they
said,
might-
could be a starting point.
that's a great starting point.
Yeah, could be.
But
One
it's
more,
not
let me
everything.
finish. I'll
What's your
give it.
question to
Now, second to Mr. Kaushik. Mr. Kaushik, I've been in touch with a couple of big houses these days, because making a film is a story, but after that, distributing it is another story.
Right.
So when we're talking about distributors, we've got all these big corporates these days. Or we've got individual, production houses like Mr. Johar or, Mr. Bhatts. It's very, very tough these days to, get access to them.
You contacted them before making the film or after?
Before.
Before.
Yeah,
And they
with the
didn't give you
pre-production time. Yeah, I mean, that's a general problem that I think most of us would be facing. So is it just luck, plain luck, Like you said,
slightly,
just
slightly.
Okay.
Other definitely luck factor is there, and you need endless patience.
yeah.
And don't feel offended.
No, no,
if
no,
If
it's
you
a
keep
part
on
of-
refusing
yeah.
you again and again, we all have faced this same problem. But what I suggest, a very important thing is like IFI, IFI film market. You register yourself as a one of the producers. You pay 10 to 12,000 for the registration, and you have access to that film market 24 hours.
Wow.
Then you keep on meeting them, and there are curators from different festivals who are going to listen to your subject, and they'll say, please give me a DVD when you make this film, or they'll put you to the script lab where you have script doctors who will talk to you, will keep on suggesting you. It will take some time,
That's okay.
but you will be under process, and you're going to meet more and more people. That is very important.
Thank
And
you.
you never know, on the very next table, Karan Johar is sitting and pitching for another movie, though he won't.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Yeah. Actually, if you've been to the Film Bazaar in Goa, which happens with IFI, there you have a lot of different sections, like you have a viewing room, you have a work in progress lab, you have a script lab. So there you can meet, if you register there, you can go and meet a lot of such people, depending on what stage you're filming. We have just time for one more question, and I think he was waiting. Just
Just
let
one
him
last
ask, let him
question
ask.
for the
If
evening.
it's a short question and short answer, we'll take your question.
And please make it very brief.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am a film student, basically. So as a newcomer in the industry, we don't have any credits with us, and we don't have the work to show to the producer. So how, as a student, we can pitch to any producer, such or as any financer? Are there any financiers available who are looking for new person? Because it's very tough for us to show anyone that we can do. And we just have the diploma films with us, but that's not because of the lack of the funds at the institutes. We don't have that much big thing making. So in India, particularly like in FTI or the SFTI or Jamia, we have like small funds for films, but it just limit our creativity in the institutes. So is there any fund available for students like this?
I'll give a very short answer. Start working with an important director or any directors. Start working. Be there. And if you are honestly hungry, you'll get your food. But don't discuss, don't read books where will you get the food. If you're honestly hungry, you'll find your food.